This next game was played a couple of days ago, about 4 days ago. I was black, my opponent was Ripka 3, rated around 2700 at the time. The time control was 5 minutes blitz. And the opening was Sicilian C3, Echo B22. So let's take a look. E4, C5, C3, Knight f6, E5, Knight D5, D4, C takes E4, Knight F3, D6, C takes C4, Knight C6, Bishop C4, Knight B6, Bishop B5, D takes E5, Knight takes D5, Bishop D7, the only move to break the pin. Knight takes D7, Queen takes C7, Knight C3, E6. This is all standard book, by the way. Castles, Bishop E7, Queen G4, castles, Bishop takes C6, B takes C6, and B takes C6 is actually the most common move, and it might be interesting to take a look at what would happen if, for example, black plays a move like, let's say, Queen takes C6. Well, there's a slight problem, although in a of course in a blitz game anything can happen. So I suppose it's better to take with the pawn. So I don't believe that's by coincidence that most players who know this variation take with the pawn, because of the Bishop H6, Bishop F6. Maybe in a blitz game, you know, stuff like that can happen, and white plays a move like Knight D5. And of course, when you take a closer look at that, sorry, Knight E4. If white plays a move like Knight to E4, then black can simply take the pawn on D4 and still hold everything down here. You know, there's no checkmate or anything like that. And there's also a pawn hanging here on B2. And let's say if white tries to protect that, Rook A1, then just F5, and there's a pawn fork over here, and well, white is just losing a piece. So we see that although it looks kind of dangerous when at a first glance, the move 16, for example, in this version, Knight to E4, but it doesn't work, and but in any case, most players play the move I play, Bishop B takes C6. And here, Bishop H6, Bishop F6, Rook F2, D1, King H8, still all book, and now Knight to E4. And since I actually took with the pawn, my queen can now retreat to D8 and protect. Well, not actually protect, but after Knight takes F6, I can just play Queen takes F6, and nothing has actually changed over here on the king side. Bishop F4, Knight E5, Bishop E5, Queen G6, Queen E2, Rook HC8. One thing I didn't like about this game was that I now have a weak pawn on C6, and that's actually a pretty important thing to keep in mind here. Although before all these trades took place, taking with the pawn was an okay move, but now when the smoke has cleared, so to speak, we can see that all black is left with this weak pawn on C6. Rook A C1, Rook D F3 E8, Queen A6, F6, Bishop G3, Knight B4. Rika played Queen C4, Knight D5, Rook E1, Queen F7, H3, Queen D7, Rook E2, Rook E8, Queen C5, King G8, and now there's a trade. Takes, and now King F7. So my king has actually managed to come all the way to the center, basically, or at least not far from it. After Rook E to C2, I played E5, D takes E5, F takes E5, Bishop E3, A3. Of course, we can see that white can actually take this pawn because After rook takes c6, rook takes c6, rook takes c6, I can play the move rook e6, and the bishop is pinned, so you can't move, and my knight attacks the c7 square, so the rook on c6 in that case. So scenario rather cannot check on c7 and then unpin the bishop that way. So for that reason, the computer did not take. But here, white is actually threatening to take c6 on c6, and the only way to protect the pawn is to play rook e6. So two things have happened already. One is that, well, it all started with this weak pawn on c6, and now I have two isolated pawns, and although the pawn on e5 is not actually particularly weak, but all the attention and focus is on this one pawn on c6, and black is on the defensive. g3, king e8, rook c5, king d7, rook a5, rook c7, bishop c5, knight b6, rook a6, rook b7, rook d1 check, king c7, b3, knight c8, king g2, rook f6, and it's very obvious now that black doesn't really have any moves. And after rook e1, there really is no way to protect the pawn on e5. So, I mean, I play rook e6, but that doesn't work, of course, because of the okay, he could have played f4 right away, but after rook e4, knight b6, and now f4. So there's no way to protect the pawn because I can't take, because if I take, the rook is hanging on e6. So I just made a move, g6, rook takes e5, rook takes e5, f takes e5, king d7, king f3, rook e6, king e4, and now after knight d7, rook takes e6, check, I resign, because, well, I'm down to two pawns, and there's no way to save a game like this. So this is a completely lost endgame for white. With that said, let's take a quick look, review the opening one more time. And it was all book until, I believe, yeah. The last book move was actually bishop g5, but instead white play 18, knight takes f6, and after queen takes f6. Both players are out of book. Hope you enjoy this. I'll see you soon. I might actually do a part 2 in this exactly the same opening, but a human opponent. So see you soon.